Greenland, Venezuela, yeah, yeah, yeah. Greenland, Venezuela, yeah, yeah, yeah. We're so concerned about what Trump is saying or doing against Venezuela and Greenland and Mexico and China and Russia. But what we have not been focused on so much, folks, is exactly what's happening right here at home. See, a couple of days ago, I had posted a video about the number of mass shootings that have been happening in the United States since the turn of the new year. Well, we're well within the new year now, we're well within January. I think it's about time that we take a look to see exactly what improvements America has made since January 1st, 2026.
We have some horrific news right now. The United States of America is facing yet another mass shooting, this time in Mississippi, where 6 people have been killed, including 1 child. According to KCRA Local, authorities have charged a 24-year-old man with murder after shooting 6 people in a series of related shootings overnight in northeast Mississippi. The shootings took place in the rural community of Cedar Bluff, which is west of the county seat of West Point. That is now 11 mass shootings since the beginning of 2026. For perspective, we are on the 10th day of 2026, which means there have been more mass shootings than days in the year for another year in a row. And it's likely only to continue to get worse. Now, you may say, why am I not hearing about this on major media companies? The truth is, well, it's because gun violence has become normalized. And I made it my mission to use my platform not to normalize this stuff. It's horrific. Spread the word because people need to know about it. Follow along to stay up to date on all the news that you need to know about. I'll have more to come soon.
This is day 7 of me posting a video. Every day there's a mass shooting in America until America does something about it. My information is coming from the Gun Violence Archive, if you're wondering, and we had a mass shooting in Cedar Bluff, Mississippi. You guys might want to buckle in because this one is pretty big. This guy went on a spree, taking the lives of 6 of his family members. Here's the whole post from the Clay County Sheriff's Office. I'm gonna give you guys a second to pause it if you want to read it. To summarize all of that, 6 people lost their lives, including a 7-year-old child in Mississippi, and the sheriff does have the suspect in custody. The suspect was a 24-year-old man who took the lives of 6 of his family members. He went to 3 separate locations late Friday and took the lives of all of these people. The youngest victim was the cousin of the suspect. The sheriff said, "I don't know what kind of motive you could have had to take the life of a 7-year-old, but he did it." The suspect was identified as Derricka M. Moore. I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name wrong. He faces first-degree charges that could be upgraded to capital. The sheriff then says that the guy wasn't on their radar and then confirms that they were all family members that he went after. The sheriff then went on and said, in a situation like this, you have a family member attacking their own family. Whatever the reason is, we're hoping that we find out. And it could have been a lot worse. After he took the life of his father, his uncle, and his brother, he drove to the second house and broke into it. This is when he unalived the 7-year-old, and then he pressed his firearm to another younger child at the scene. For some reason, he didn't take the life of that child, which is by the grace of God at this point. Somewhere in that whole scene, he tried to attempt SA, I'm guessing on the kids. And I'm also noting that it says he attempted to commit, which means that he didn't do it, which again, seems like by the grace of God. And after this, he went to another residence, which he took the lives of the last 2 people. I don't know what to say. I hope that guy gets the absolute worst punishment that we can give to him, but I have one question. Is it time for gun control yet? Because this brings our total mass shootings for 2026 to 11. But let me know what you guys think. Hopefully I don't see you guys in the next one. Peace.
416 people have been killed in America from gun violence in 2026 as of January 10th. 416 are dead. That is not including the injured. There have been more mass shootings than days of the year. And if you want to say guns aren't the problem, people are the problem, you know what? Let's come correct. Let's be really, real correct. Men are the problem. Men kill people, not guns. But we can't take out the men, right? That's not what you're suggesting. So why don't we just take out the guns? Why don't we make that the choice? Either all the men got locked up or all the guns get locked up. That's going to stop the violence. You got any better suggestions? Because adding more guns hasn't been helping. And if you're one of the men that's dumb enough to say that stricter gun laws don't work, no. There's so much evidence that stricter gun laws work. You can look literally anywhere else in the world. We are the only major modern country with lax gun laws. The only one. Look at the fuck up. It's not even the first month, and we're already going to have more shootings than almost every other country in the world combined. Combined. Not to mention this president is starting a land war in 3 different countries. I'm sure that's not going to kill Americans.
I don't think Americans in the United States realize how the rest of the world sees us. Let me give you an example. A while back, I was having a conversation with my friend. Now, my friend lives here in Mexico. She's Mexican, and her daughter was going to study in the United States, or thinking about going to study in the United States for university. And she was saying to me how worried she was for her daughter to go study in the US because it is so dangerous. She was like, I don't know, there's so much gun violence. I don't know if it's safe. I was saying to her, you should be fine, avoid these places at night, avoid these cities. And then as I was saying it, it hit me. As a US citizen that lives in Mexico, this is something that I hear all the time about going to Mexico. People will say to me, I don't like you going to Mexico, it's so dangerous. Did you see the news? But the same exact thing is being said and happening about people going to visit the United States, especially right now. Growing up, we're so indoctrinated to believe that we are so lucky to be born in the United States, this place where only we have freedoms and safety. But from the outside looking in, it's completely different. People see mass shootings, gun violence, police violence, and now a government restricting rights. And they worry for their people going to visit the United States.
Well, there was another mass shooting last night. This time it was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The shooting reportedly left 1 person deceased and 11 others with injuries. This was on Saturday night, April 26th. The shooting occurred near the Ridley's, believe it or not, just off the beach. Just before midnight on Saturday night at 11:50 p.m., Myrtle Beach police happened to come upon a large fight involving a large group of people. According to police, it was said they saw a large disturbance involving multiple individuals. Cops said the chaotic fight then turned deadly in Myrtle Beach when someone pulled out a weapon. That then forced an officer to fire back at the suspect. It was said that during the altercation, officers saw someone fire a gun, and that's when an officer also fired their weapon. That was the person who died. The individual who was shot during officer response passed away as a result of their injuries. The person who died was reportedly 18-year-old Jarius Davis. Authorities said that the officer who was involved in the shooting luckily had no injuries. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED, will now conduct an investigation. They'll do an independent investigation into the officer-involved shooting, and that's following standard procedure. The Myrtle Beach Police Department will also carry out an internal review of the incident.
So I'm pulling out some data right now that basically shows the number of mass shootings we've had over the last decade or so, roughly, in the United States. Not just basically not America, the United States. We're not talking about Canada. We're not talking about Mexico, because whenever people say America, they're kind of just referring to the United States. And I want to be clear that these numbers are specific to the United States and nowhere else. Okay, so just kind of taking a look at this, because I'm a data guy. Let's go all the way back to 2014 here. Okay, so back in 2014, we had nearly 300 shootings in a single year. Nearly 300 mass shootings in a single year. That's just a touch under 1 per day. Now, you've got to ask yourself this question. United States has all this wealth, right? Big giant, global giant, juggernaut, economic juggernaut, to say the least. Why do we even have 300 mass shootings in a year? Why do we have those numbers? That just doesn't add up to me. If you look at some of the most dangerous countries in the world, some of them don't even have those numbers. So why do we have it? Now, I can hear the critics in the comment section. They're going to say, well, it's because of our population, and our population is much bigger than other places. We have over 330 million people or so, and that's the reason why our numbers are larger. Well, that may be true, but if you're looking at percentage of population and per capita numbers, we are well above the crime index. I mean, we're well above it, right? We're definitely not the safest nation in the world. In fact, I think that on the safest nations in the world, that includes geopolitical safety, that includes, domestic safety, that includes all kinds of safety indexes. the United States ranks like in the middle of the list. I think it's like 127 out of 252 countries. So, that goes to show you that we're not doing very well, guys, in terms of crime and safety. And then if you look at 2015 here, it just goes up. I mean, these numbers are exorbitant. It just doesn't make any sense. We're at about what, 330 shootings in 2015. A lot of these we probably don't even remember. Now, I just want to be clear. What is a mass shooting? It's a shooting that involves anywhere from four or more victims. You need to have at least four victims for it to be considered a mass shooting. So that already tells you where we are in terms of safety in America. And then if we look at last year, 2025, for example, that number is almost like 1.5 times more than what it was, over 10 years ago. That was at 400 mass shootings. So that's more than one per day. And then 2026, as I mentioned at the top of this video, since January 1st, right now it's January 13th, we've got more mass shootings in the year than we've had days so far. So it's not looking good if the trends continue, and that's the reason why I'm saying, we need to kind of reflect on why this is happening. And this may be happening for a myriad of reasons. One reason is because if you look at the 2014 numbers, who was in office at the time? And again, it could be that the president was not a direct influence, but there was quite a bit of animosity toward us having a president that was not necessarily, in many people's eyes, a good reflection of what America should look like, due to his racial background, and in some cases, some people may argue his policies, right? But that's neither here nor there. I would definitely say that in 2014, all the way up to 2016, when Trump first ran and then got elected into office, we're starting to see the numbers, hike up. Now, that's a very interesting trend because, and again, what I'm about to say, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. I'm more of an independent thinker, and I see pros and cons in both parties, rather. I see pros and cons in both sides, and I definitely want to make sure that I'm clear in what I'm saying right now, so that people won't think, well, he's a Democratic supporter or he's a Trump supporter. But it's very awkward how the Republicans often say that most of the crime happens in blue cities, and to some degree they are correct. A lot of the crime does happen in blue cities, which are usually the most major cities in the country, because the New Yorks, the Los Angeleses, the Detroits, the Baltimores. These are major cities in the country, and you have a lot of various cultures who tend to be more liberal, living in these countries, and that's quite obvious that they'll be blue. You don't have many red cities in America. You've got a couple, maybe. Some people would argue that Dallas is somewhat purple, but again, that might be changing over time. And so yeah, the GOP will say, well, these crimes are happening in these cities, and that's the reason why this is a problem, because these cities are not being policed correctly. But based on these numbers, a lot of this crime, I bet you, part of it may have happened in major cities, but a lot of it happens in the suburbs, guys. Like, whenever you hear of mass shootings, do you really think of this stuff happening in New York City? How many times have you heard of mass shootings, 4 victims or more being shot in mass? I think one of the last ones we heard, as of the time of this recording, back in 2015, was the murder. I think that was 2015. Sorry, 2025, not 2015. The murder of the CEO from United Healthcare, who was walking through the streets of New York when I think his name was Luigi. This guy Luigi ran up on him and pretty much, dumped lead into him because he was having some tough times and some mental issues. So then there was like another one where a guy ran into a building, but that was not really a major mass shooting. A lot of the major ones happen in schools in the suburbs. A lot of them happen at nightclubs that are near suburban areas. Um, they don't really happen in the major cities. So it's interesting that the Republicans are not addressing that issue. And in fact, this may be slightly off topic, but the ICE shooting that happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with that woman, last name was Good, I believe, who was shot and killed by an ICE agent. That scenario was also very interesting, and you're starting to see a lot of Caucasian people, in particular, saying, "Hey, we should have listened to Black folks. We should have listened to them because now we're being killed by ICE." So sometimes it takes one to experience pain and sorrow for them to be able to relate to the struggles of a certain group. And it's sad what happened. It is a little confusing why she was just blocking the road like that. But at the same time, I don't think anyone deserves to be killed, especially if they are not being necessarily violent. So again, people have different opinions on that. There were different videos that were taken. If the ICE agent and that it was in the right and his life was threatened, I can understand why he would take the shot. If he were not in the right, then he should definitely serve time and justice should be served to the people. So, but again, that's slightly off topic. Getting back to this here, there is obviously a growing trend of mass shootings across America. Now, some may say, looking at this chart, in 2025, we actually had a dip, a major dip, also in 2024. I saw a video recently where people were pretty much celebrating that there was a 20% decrease in violent crime in the United States in 2025. That is nothing to celebrate because there's still people getting murdered every day in mass in America, right? Like, just look at these numbers, guys. That tells you right here, like, you're looking at over 400 mass shootings in a year, and that's just mass shootings. That's not including, gun murders between two people or between two, three, four, five people, whatever the case is. It's not including murders where there are less than four victims, essentially, right? It's not including that. It's not including knife attacks. It's not including deaths by rape. It's not including, suicides, which is technically could be considered a crime too, but obviously it's a special category. But in terms of homicides, it's not including that. So when people like rejoice and say, "Hey, yeah, we have 20% less," like I also saw some like data from New York this year, or was it this year? No, it was last year in 2025, where they said, I think I looked at this in July 2025, and they said that, yeah, New York City has only had 250 murders this year. Only 250. That's great. And I'm like, 250? There are whole countries, including Switzerland, that never get 250 in a decade. And you're seeing 250 in 6 months, 7 months? That's nothing to celebrate. And I think that unfortunately, America is a country where it's going to be very difficult for them to correct the wrongs of society. Our population is already poisoned. We're already filled with violent thoughts. We're already being influenced by politics. We're already being influenced by, some may say, video games. I kind of disagree with that because you have societies in Japan, for example, where children watch bloody cartoons and sports, and they play video games at a very young age, and then they grow up and they do not commit homicides. If anything, suicide is a problem in Japan, but not homicides. Very low murder rates in Japan. So we can't say that it's entertainment, nor can we say it's just a gun. Now, one of the videos that we just covered, the lady there said, well, some people say it's some people say it's the gun. That it's not the gun, rather it's the people. Well, I say it's the men. yeah, a lot of men do commit gun violence, but I've also covered in the prior video that I did, check it out on the channel, how there are women who do it as well. Now, are there as many women who commit homicides by gun as men? Definitely not. Like, men to women ratio is astronomically different. Um, but there are women who have committed mass shootings, as well as normal shootings, if you want to quote it that, um, in the United States against innocent people. So, but it is technically a man problem. I would say mass shootings, based on data I saw before, typically falls within the bucket of white men, whereas gang-related shootings fall among Black and Latinos the most. And that's usually based on socioeconomic deprivation, um, lack of resources in their households and neighborhoods. I don't I don't know the reason why there are a lot of mass shootings though. My guess is that there are people who are feeling a lot of pain either in the household or in the economy, in the country. They probably feel oppressed, and or they may have had bad relationships with certain people, and then they go out and they commit mass shootings to take out their vengeance on others. And the same thing can be said when it comes to school shootings. So yeah, it's definitely not a great time um, to be saying, well, we're getting safer, because when you look at these numbers compared to other countries, it's just ludicrous, right? Guys, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. YouTube thinks you'll like the video on the far left here. Give that a click, and I'll see you guys on the next one.